Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to this seminar where we will present results of our pre-study report, COVID-19 pandemic and regional economic resilience in Northern Finland, Sweden and Norway. My name is Jaakko Simonen. I'm working as an associate professor in Oulu Business School, University of Oulu, and I'm also acting as chair of our research group. Okay, First, I would like to introduce our research group, where we have economists from 4 different universities of Arctic 5, so-called Arctic 5 universities, representing regional expertise from all 3 countries, especially northern part of these countries. From the University of Oulu, we have Emeritus Professor Rauli Svento and researcher Tapio Riepponen, who has been working as our data expert. Tapio has collected statistics from several data sources and compiled them so we can make comparisons between the regions. From Umeå University, we have Professor Lars Westin, and from Luleå University of Technology, we have a Professor Anders Hersinger. From the Arctic University of Norway, Tromsø, we have Professor Stein Osby, and the Associate Professor Mikko Moilanen. Mikko will later present our findings on the effects of pandemic on the labor markets in the Arctic 5 cities. Our research is connected to the GenSet project, a strategic profiling project in human sciences at the University of Oulu, supported by the Academy of Finland and the University of Oulu. Shortly about the agenda for today. First, we will show some statistics which show the development of the pandemic, both on the country and the municipality level in the so-called Arctic 5 cities, which are Oulu and Rovaniemi in Finland, Luleå and Umeå in Sweden, and Tromsø in Norway. Then we will take a brief look how the pandemic has changed people's behavior. Google Community Mobility Reports provide interesting data which can be used to evaluate the effects of restrictions. After that, we look at the statistics which show how the COVID-19 pandemic has affected the labor markets in the Arctic 5 cities. And then finally, we present some conclusions and possible future development prospects for regional development in the Arctic Scandinavia after this current pandemic, as well as ideas how to study the resilience of these Arctic 5 cities more detailed in forthcoming studies. After that, after the presentation, we will have 3 commentary speeches from Oulu and Umeå and Tromsø. And after that, hopefully we have a time for your questions. And of course, you can post comments and questions in chat during the whole presentation. And all these slides and recording of this event will become available on the website of Oulu Business School probably tomorrow, Thursday. Totally, this event might take about 45 minutes to 50 minutes, but let's see. Why this report? The Arctic regions typically receive special attention related to climate change, living conditions of indigenous people, increasing economic interest towards natural resources. However, there are, like we all know, also various types of economic issues, like a discussion about the Northern Sea Route and the Arctic Connect data cables, which are important and modify the development of these Arctic regions. The cities which we have analyzed in this particular report are in many ways the engines of growth in the Arctic Scandinavia. Their growth has a positive impact on the surrounding regions. Total population of these cities is approximately a little over 500,000, which is about 1/3 of the total population in northern Finland, Sweden, and Norway. So our aim is to provide a reliable statistical review on the development of the COVID-19 pandemic in Finland, Norway, and Sweden, and especially in these Arctic 5 cities. And how the pandemic has changed people's behavior. Our report will also provide interesting statistical review of the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on labor markets in the Arctic 5 cities. How hard it has hit on the labor markets and how well these cities have adapted to and recovered from the pandemic. On the long term, our research, the aim of our research, which is based on this pre-study, is to analyze the short and long run regional economic impacts as well as recovery processes of the COVID-19 pandemic in northern Finland, Sweden, and Norway. Another aim is to provide valuable information about successful and less successful practices in these regions and thereby provide possible policy recommendations for the future. These regional effects we will analyze later on from the perspective of regional resilience. And of course, one important aim is also to gather people together to share ideas and strengthen the ongoing cross-border cooperation between these Arctic 5 cities and the universities. Okay, this figure here summarizes the development of COVID-19 pandemic in Finland, Sweden, and Norway. Like we all know, the development of COVID-19 pandemic has been significantly different in Finland and Norway compared to Sweden. Actually, the development was highly similar in all three countries until October 2020. After that, the development of COVID-19 in Sweden passed even the average rate in Europe. One important reason for this has been the differences in national and regional containment regulations. Finland and Norway have set very strict national restrictions since the beginning of the pandemic. At the same time, Sweden has applied, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, different strategy to prevent spread of the pandemic and to mitigate its effects. In our report, we open a little bit more these strategies related to restaurant school closures, remote teaching, as well as restrictions on public gatherings and meetings. We can say that the development of the COVID-19 pandemic in the Arctic 5 cities has followed more or less the national development in Finland, Sweden, and Norway. The figure, the smaller figure in this particular figure is the same what we have in the previous slide. Perhaps the most significant differences in city and country level development can be found in the cases of Umeå and Rovaniemi. In Umeå, there has been over 3,000 cumulative COVID-19 cases per 100,000 inhabitants less than in Sweden on average. Also in Rovaniemi, we had over 1,000 cases less than in Finland as a whole. In Oulu and Tromsø, the growth rate has been reasonably slow during the whole pandemic. When we look at the weekly cases, we see that until weeks 40 to 44 in October last year, the development was quite similar in all regions. In autumn, on weeks 44-45, there happened a big change in Umeå and Luleå. This can be clearly seen in the figure. Another, even more dramatic change happened in the winter 2020-21 when British mutation hit Umeå and Luleå. Okay, let's take a little bit closer look how the development in these regions, how it differs from the national development. This figure provides a closer look to the weekly development of the pandemic in the Arctic 5 cities compared to national development. The figure shows values of the ratio which has been calculated by dividing weekly COVID-19 cases per 100,000 inhabitants in the municipality by weekly cases of the 100,000 inhabitants in the country level. We can say that in Rovaniemi, in the top of the figure, blue line, weekly cases have been lower during the whole pandemic compared to country level. In Oulu, red line here, we see that there has been some spikes in the figure and the beginning of the pandemic and in the autumn 2020. Weekly peaks show that since the emergence of large number of cases, their number have also decreased quite rapidly. The bottom figure shows the ratio between Tromsø and Norway. In the case of Tromsø, the graph seems highly similar compared to Oulu. Few oscillational spikes, but they disappear quickly, reflecting that pandemic has been under control. As I said, the development of the pandemic in Umeå and Luleå was quite similar compared to other Arctic 5 cities until October 2020. Few occasional spikes, but situation was better compared to country level. After week 40, the ratio has stayed just below 1 in Umeå, meaning that weekly cases are lower in Umeå compared to average in Sweden. At the same time, in Luleå, ratio has been around 1 from week 40 until week 6 this year. If we look at that graph or curve of Luleå, we see that during the week 6 to 8 this year, the ratio was clearly above 1. In fact, the ratio was over 2.5, which means that weekly cases in Luleå were more than twice as high as Swedish average. Over the past month, attention has focused on vaccination coverage. In our report, vaccination coverage is measured as a share of total population who have received at least 1 dose of vaccine. Overall, the vaccination coverage is a bit higher in Finland if you look at the people who have received at least 1 vaccination. But at the same time, the percentage share of fully vaccinated people in Sweden is much higher compared to Finland. In Norway, it is more than twice as high in Finland. We can see that there are also differences between vaccination coverage in cities compared to country level. In this table, if we look at first Oulu and Rovaniemi, we see that they are clearly behind the national vaccination coverage. Luleå and Umeå are in turn ahead of national coverage, which comes concerning the first dose. And Tromsø is also following the national vaccination pace. If you look at the right column in this table concerning the second dose, we see that percentage of people who have received also the second dose, Oulu is clearly behind other Arctic 5 cities. In Tromsø, the vaccination coverage is almost 18%. Okay, in many countries such as Finland, Sweden, and Norway, governments have set up different type of lock-in policies to prevent spread of COVID-19 pandemic. These restrictions have affected how people spend their time, free time, and how much they spend time at home, for example. As I said, Google Mobility Community Mobility reports provide interesting data which can be used to evaluate the effect of these restrictions. In these figures, which I think are very interesting, these blue curves show how the time which people have spent at home has developed in the Arctic 5 municipalities, and the red curves show how the COVID-19 cases have developed at the same time. In this figure, left axis shows weekly COVID cases, and the right axis illustrates change in the human behavior. This it is measured with a weekly average change in hours spent at home compared to the baseline, which is a median day value from January last year, 2020. At the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, around week 10 to 20 last year, hours spent at home increased significantly in all Arctic 5 cities. The increase was highest in Tromsø, over 20%, while increase in other cities was around 10 to 15%. In May last year, the average increase in time spent at home, approximately 1 year ago, was around 12% in Tromsø, Rovaniemi, and Oulu, and about 9% in Luleå and Umeå. During the summertime, hours spent at home dropped in all Arctic 5 cities. However, the drop was smaller in Luleå and Umeå if we compare these cities. In autumn 2020, number of COVID cases, which this red curve shows us, increased in all cities except in Rovaniemi. We see that at the same time, people started to spend more time at home too. It is quite interesting that even when the increase in cases in Rovaniemi was minimal, the increase in hours spent at home was similar to many of these other cities. The reason could be that people are reacting to the news from other parts of Finland and are following the national restrictions. From the beginning of this year, which the development can be seen in the last box in these smaller boxes, I mean the last part of these boxes, this blue curve looks pretty similar in all cities, despite the fact that weekly cases have been much higher in Luleå and Umeå than in other cities. We could have expected that increase in cases could increase the amount of time people spend at home. But in general or typically, in Arctic 5 cities, people spend around 7% more time at home compared to pre-COVID. Compared to national capitals, Helsinki, Stockholm, and Oslo, the average increase is 4 percentage points lower. It is interesting that patterns show quite similar patterns between the cities. This would indicate that different strategies between countries has an impact, but not as large as many may expect. When we compare last spring or this year spring to what we saw in spring 2020, so these figures here shows how much time people spend at home compared to the baseline, which is this January 2020. So red curve here shows presents what happened in spring 2020, and the blue curve what happened this spring. So we see that people have been less at home than a year ago, and so in percentage points the difference are between 6.5 to 8.7 in Tromsø, Rovaniemi, and Oulu. These three figures top of this slide. In Umeå and Luleå, the difference is clearly smaller than in other cities. This is something that we could expect because we know how the COVID-19 cases has developed in these cities. I mean Umeå and Luleå compared to other three cities. However, we must remember that compared to the baseline, time spent at home is still higher. It's about 4 percentage points higher in Tromsø and Rovaniemi, about 5.5 in Oulu, and Luleå and Umeå it's 7 to 8 percentage points higher. This is Google mobility data is very interesting, and Google provides also different kind of mobility data, so which we will analyze in our forthcoming studies more detailed. So here we have a figure which shows the development in Umeå and Luleå during the pandemic, and our member of our research group, Professor Lars Westin, will next comment these figures more detailed. So Lars, please.
Okay, thank you, Jaakko. You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for leading this project, so excellent, and for the presentation. Yes, what one can see here, as you said, there is similarities in the pattern between the cities, but also between the Arctic 5 cities when it comes to time spent home, so to say, and the blue lines. And so there is similar for Umeå, for instance, and Luleå also. You can observe that they are university cities, and so in June, for instance, people move around a little, but then it stops during the summer, and then in the beginning of the autumn of 2020, again there are movements. Testing, the red one, there you have cases, but that's clearly connected to when testing also starts in Sweden. So you can see that there is the number of cases, incidences increases in both cities from the autumn of 2020. And that also means that the signals from authorities, and also I think it's a learning process from individual people, is that you should be more observant on the regulations and stay home. The more companies, and here in Umeå, the public companies or the public officers and so becomes more outspoken about the need to stay at home, so to say. So that's a learning, and that continues. It is a decrease, of course, during the spring, but it continues. So you have a stable pattern. But especially if you look in Luleå, you have some periods with more incidents, so to say, cases, and that's due to a change in patterns. There are some, if I understand it right, within some companies and workplaces, you get some intense spreading of the COVID. So for that reason, you have higher peaks in Luleå compared to Umeå. And then in the end here of so to say the spring and beginning of the summer, there is a change. So you have a higher degree of cases in both cities again, and that seems to be that it's schools. So there's change in the pattern. Younger people, perhaps connected with the British form of the COVID, and but it's younger people that are hit by the COVID. Yes, I think that is what one can say. I mean, it's around for the Västerbotten county, for instance, it has around 10% of the number of the inhabitants has been infected, roughly, we will say that, and it's perhaps less than 200 people that has been killed, around 600 that has been within a hospital, and 150 on intensive care. But that's for the whole of the county, so to say.
Yes, thank you very much, Lars. These interesting views and comments, and so this is something which we will follow in the forthcoming studies, how things will develop also in Luleå and Umeå. So the change in human behavior has an effect on the economy, that's clear. When the time spent at home increases, the time is taken away from something else. And spending time at home during the pandemic have influenced on the local demand, for example, demand of services and so on. And this of course has an effect on unemployment too. So next, Mikko Moilanen from the University of Tromsø will present our findings concerning the labor markets. So Tromsø, can you hear us?
I can hear you, but my video is stopped by the host.
Okay, just a minute.
Okay,
now we can see.
Thank you. This is Tromsø calling.
Okay,
my 12 points go to Jaakko and Lars. So now we look at the effects of the pandemic on labor markets, and more especially on unemployment. What you see here now in this on this slide, you see the unemployment rate for the 5 cities which we study from January 2018 to April 2021, over 13 years. It's a long time span. The cities there are from the top, they are Oulu, Rovaniemi, Luleå, Umeå, and Tromsø has the lowest unemployment rate. So what has happened under the present COVID-19 crisis? And please click, Jaakko. One eye catcher are the spikes in unemployment in Rovaniemi and Oulu and Tromsø. This sharp increase in unemployment is a combined effect of the, let's say, hard lockdowns in these countries and national changes to the rules for temporary layoffs. They changed the rules. It was easier for companies to lay off people. There were also changes in unemployment benefits. What we also see is that in the start of pandemic, Sweden applied different strategy. They didn't have as hard lockdown as Finland and Norway, and therefore the immediate effect of COVID outbreak was not that dramatic in Luleå and Umeå. What we also see is that there has been a slow decrease in unemployment after the initial shock in all cities. This decrease in the course of last month, it has been bigger in Luleå and Umeå, while Rovaniemi, Oulu, and Tromsø has had a small decrease or stabilized unemployment. How severe has the effect of COVID-19 on labor market been? Please click, Jaakko. Can you click once more? So here we see the dashed lines. The effect of COVID-19, at least after the initial shock, has in Rovaniemi, Oulu, and Tromsø been around the same as under the financial crisis in 2009. While the effect in Umeå and Luleå has been much lower than under a financial crisis. However, this COVID crisis is different from the financial crisis when it comes to unemployment effects. There are different sectors that are affected. And please click, Jaakko. We can see this very clear in a change in unemployment measured. It's a percentage change from the beginning of pandemic to the freshest figures from April. And we see that the effect has been most dramatic in Tromsø, with almost doubling, while Rovaniemi, the effect is now in Rovaniemi has been 33% increase, and the effect for or percentage change in unemployment has been rather modest in Umeå and Luleå. Why do we observe these differing changes in unemployment rates due to COVID? Well, and click. The main explanations are the differing industrial structures and differing restrictions, both local and national restrictions. So now we turn to look at how the unemployment effects of COVID-19 relate to the industrial structures in these Arctic 5 cities. First we observe that large public sectors, all of these cities, 5 cities, have large public sectors. These work as stabilizing force. All of these cities have higher public, or bigger public sectors than country averages. It stabilizes the labor market effects of COVID-19, as these working places are not affected by, or not that much affected by, business cycle. Well, what are the sectors that have been most affected? And please click Jaakko. And once more. Tourism has been hit by, as we know, has been hit hard by travel restriction. To illustrate how dramatic this effect has been, we show here data or a figure on guest nights by foreigners. This is on county level. So these are international travelers. The data here is from December 18 to April or March. It's to March 2021, and we see almost overnight reduction from very high levels of visitors to literally to zero. And this, of course, has had very strong effects, not only on tourist sector, but also hotels and restaurants and sectors that are closely related to tourism. Please click once more, Jaakko. Tourism is more important sector in Tromsø and Rovaniemi than in other Arctic 5 cities. And this we can see in this figure on the left, which shows industrial structures of Arctic 5 compared to country averages. For example, if we go in the left corner, down left corner, there you can see hotels and restaurants. The sector is in Rovaniemi and Tromsø. It is larger than the country. The country average is showing that it is an important sector in those cities. So they were hard hit. Also, the hard hit was the cultural sector, as there are no any festivals or arrangements that could be arranged. Personal services that need physical contact, like hairdressers and similar, has also been very hard affected. We see a large increase in unemployment in this sector. And as Jaakko mentioned, also there has been a large increase in sales work. Sales work sector. People are, maybe some of the shops are closed down, or they have reduced their activity due to less customers. What we also see that there's an increase in construction, unemployment in construction, especially in Rovaniemi and Oulu. Can click once more, Jaakko. So, but there are, of course, or not of course, but how is this different from, I said the effect from financial crisis was different. This time, manufacturing in this crisis has not been affected so much. Manufacturing sector is strong in Umeå and Luleå, as we can see into this large bubble here. They have larger manufacturing sectors than Tromsø and Rovaniemi. Especially engineering and ICT sector, some of it has even blossomed under a COVID crisis, as they have there has been a huge demand for solutions, for digital solutions like Zoom and this kind of applications. Also, personal services that can be done by distance has held its production high, as the production has been moved to literally to thousands of home offices in these cities. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, public sector occupations are very important in these 5 cities. We can say that because of a lot of schools, there are a lot of universities, high schools in these 5 cities. They are administrative centers. Luleå and Rovaniemi have people working in national defense. So these occupations have not been affected or very little by the pandemic. And click, Jakob. There's some kind of lag. Anyway, the many of these hardest hit sectors, like personal services that need physical contact and sales work, they have a high proportion of young people and low-skilled workers, and we see that there are a big increase in unemployment among these groups have been much higher than in other groups. So, what about the way ahead? Do we see any light in the tunnel? Yes, we do. Why can we say that? We use data from new open vacancies registered by labor authorities. Open vacancies can forecast. You can make short-term forecasts how it goes on labor market using these. Why? Because before hiring, the companies, they have to post open vacancies. So they don't have to if they have that, but usually the companies post open vacancies, and therefore this happens ahead of hiring people, and therefore the open vacancies data, they react more quickly to increased activity in labor market. What do we see here on the left side? We have data on new open vacancies during the month from January 2015 to April 2021. The dashed lines, the vertical dashed lines in the figure shows the outbreak of pandemic. We see that there was an immediate, rather dramatic decrease in the inflow of open vacancies right after the pandemic. What we also see is that there has been a rebound, and there has also been different kind of rebounds. For example, in Rovaniemi, this rebound in new open vacancies has taken a longer time than the other cities. But my main message from this figure is that in every city here, the demand of labor measured by open vacancies is clearly higher, clearly above the pre-COVID levels. And based on these figures here, we expect that the unemployment will decrease in the coming months in these 5 cities. This is an ongoing project, and we will look more into this data and research it more further down the road. And Jaakko, now it's your turn.
Thank you very much, Mikko. This is definitely something that deserves more detailed studies and investigation in our forthcoming studies. Okay, shortly some conclusions and what we could expect from the future. So we have all reasons to believe that the economic effects of pandemic, for instance, related to unemployment, will last for years. Regional effects will probably vary according to the population density. We can compare cities or rural areas, attractiveness of these areas, various amenities definitely will play an important role, and the economic diversity of regions, industrially diverse versus specialized areas. And as Mikko said, the role of public sector as a stabilizing force will definitely have an effect on regional development now and after the shock or when we have recovered from this current shock. One of the global megatrends is that, especially in Western world, the role of service sector as an employer is growing. The regional development in northern Finland, Sweden, and Norway follows this global trend. Service businesses is becoming the main driver of the economic development. Employment has increased, especially in social services and healthcare. Tourism has become one of the most important sectors worldwide. We can well assume that this trend will continue after the pandemic. At the same time, there's an increasing interest towards digital solutions and automation in services, and the pandemic has already shown this. We all know different kind of examples about these. Over the past month, we have heard news about large industrial investments in northern Finland, northern Sweden, and northern Norway. They will increase the demand for skilled labor force in the forthcoming years. There are also some signs about this. Regional resilience, if you think about how well these regions can adapt and recover from this current pandemic and many other shocks also, is significantly based on resilience of people. Therefore, it's crucial that we do not see the brain drain from these regions, which are in many ways, as I said, engines of growth in these regions. And we must keep people here, and we also must attract new employees. This is particularly important now when these regions are already suffering from the shortage of labor force, especially skilled labor force. Oulu region is a textbook example of highly resilient region, which has managed to adapt to various types of shocks. There are some signs that this will happen and has happened in the case of COVID-19 pandemic too. History has shown that the effects of shock can be alleviated through the effective creative actions and regional policy. We can summarize these things into 3 pillars of creative resilience: knowledge creation, entrepreneurship, and community spirit. This we need also now when we are recovering from the current COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, next we will have 3 commentary speeches First, we hear comments from Juha Alamursula, who is Executive Director in Business Oulu. Then we go back to Umeå. There we have Anna Olofsson, who is the Head of City Marketing in Umeå Municipality. And then we take contact again to Tromsø, where Trude Nielsen, CEO of Chamber of Commerce Tromsø, is ready to give his comments on our report and regional effects of COVID-19 pandemic in general. So please, Juha, you can start.
Okay, thank you, Jakob. First of all, very warm greetings from just nominated European Capital of Culture 2026. We just managed to get this status about 45 minutes ago. Anyway, thank you for the excellent report, and it is a good way to compare how the three different countries are handling the crisis, and also we can see what kind of impacts it has especially to the unemployment and economic life. This is a social crisis, and we quickly now see what is the economic impact here, and we can also see that this is it takes a long time to cover from this crisis because of the unemployment, and we see that the unemployment is getting smaller, but still those who have been more than 1,000 days without the jobs, these numbers will increase a long time. And main reason is that like a 2 years just graduated persons, they cannot find a job so easily. So that is kind of a pile of young people who are entering to the labor market. They are kind of competing those who have been long time without a job. So it will take, at least in Finland, it will take quite a long time to get back to the same level it was before the COVID. We also like to see, hopefully in the future, kind of impacts for the social side, and what is the impact for the depression, kind of other kind of health related topics from the crisis, and also maybe the standard of even the standard of living, how that has been impacted. And also we see that this report is helping cities and regions to build the society to more resilient against the crisis. As Jaakko mentioned, we have had a financial crisis. Nokia mobile phone stepped out from the business this crisis some years ago. So we have a little bit prepared this, but again, this gave a new kind of shock. And I think this climate change and other kind of things happen, so that we need to be prepared for various kind of shocks also in the coming years. So thank you for the report, and I'm looking forward to even follow up topics after this pandemic. What kind of other kind of studies we can find in order to prepare and build societies more resilient against the shocks and crises. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Juha. These are very interesting views, and we definitely will take that to our table. Okay, thank you. And then we go to Umeå, Anna.
Well, thank you for having me here, and congratulations to the European Capital of Culture. You're in for a fun period of time, and I can tell you that as a former participant in the group of European Capital of Culture. which brings me to one of the other and sometimes overlooked parts of the society that has struck an enormous defeat in the pandemic, the cultural sector. And given the fact that our cities, when it comes to attractiveness, which is important in order to keep and to gain an interesting workforce, we need to build attractive cities, and culture has been one of the areas where Umeå has really put a lot of money and work into in order to shape a society, a city around culture, because culture is something that that connects people and makes a city attractive. The fact that so many cultural institutions have had to shut down during the pandemic, and many of the workforce within this field has had to really reconsider their career paths. Has to that is one of the big fears that we can see, is how will society look, how much of culture do we have still when we are now starting to open up the society. So that is something that I really think should be considered in the continuous studies. One other thing that I really think is important also to study has to do with the infrastructure that is necessary for the tourism industry that has been mentioned here. We are all cities where we had many airlines flying in and out, bringing tourism back and from our cities, and also connecting us. And here we can see in Sweden, but I bet in Norway and Finland as well, the huge impact that the pandemic have had on airlines. And I think that many companies and organizations live in an assumption that now that we all get a vaccine, that the airlines will start and come back to the same amount of turnarounds as they had before. But we know that this will take a long time. That area is also stripped out of competence. They have had to lay off so many people, in pilots and air stewardesses and people working on ground. And in order to reestablish that infrastructure will take a longer time than we have perhaps anticipated. And this is also something where the notion that we can have meetings like this, that it's so easy to see each other digitally, will also hit on this infrastructure. So the fact that the airlines have the pandemic, the digital revolution, and also they have to adapt to the sustainability issues, gives at least me a little bit of an uneasy feeling on how connected will we be in the northern parts of Sweden, Norway, and Finland in the coming years. So that is also an impact that the pandemic have had on us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna. Yes, I totally agree that we must take care of the attractiveness of our regions, both for those people who live here, but also those people who might are thinking about moving to these cities. Okay, and then we go to Tromsø.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Super. Well, thank you so much for your presentation. That was really interesting to see what your research has come to. And we are not surprised, and we do feel that this represents the picture that we are living today, unfortunately. So I just wanted to say that I'm really on the same page as Anna. Infrastructure, digitalization, sustainability are going to be huge impact factors on the further development of many of our industries, especially the tourist industry, of course. As Mikko showed us, the unemployment rate between these sectors like tourism, service sector has had big increase in the rate, and other industries like construction, aquaculture, which we are big in, and the fisheries, of course, has had a bit of a downside, but are stable and kind of getting back on track due to the pricing that has become better. And then you have the big picture about the infrastructure, which is very important for us. We are living almost on the North Pole. And for most people in the world, they are saying, how can you even live there? Do you have internet access and stuff like that? You all know about these questions, I guess. So I think that to continue to develop the infrastructure, both on the air, in the air and on land, at the sea route, of course, is important for Tromsø. We are a coast city. That means that we will be in the hotspot for the northern east sea route when that is getting more and more actual. And then the last thing I want to say something about is that in Norway we have extended a lot of the tax and the fees for especially the tourist and the service and restaurants and hotels and all the industries that delivers into the tourism. And I am very concerned about the bankruptcy rate. Probably will get higher when these taxes and fees are getting when you can't get this pushed and delayed anymore, and you have to pay this. And then the liquid situation in the companies are already very stressful, and I'm a bit worried about the outcome of this situation. So that was all I had planned to say, and thank you so much for inviting me into this arena.
Thank you very much, Trude, and thank you to all of you for these very interesting and valuable insights and comments. They will provide us important information and give us a deeper understanding what is happening in these different cities, which are in many sense, like we have heard, I mean, they are in different, if we think about the infrastructures and so, and it will be interesting to see what we will, what kind of development we will see in these cities in forthcoming months and also in forthcoming years and decades, of course. So thank you very much. This is and there were many things which we will definitely look closer or more detailed in our forthcoming studies, which we will continue to in forthcoming years. So we have had now, we have got some questions, and Tapio has already answered those questions in chat. But if you have some questions, you can ask now, or you can send emails for us. We will answer your questions also through emails. And so our report and the slides of this presentation and the recording of the seminar will come available on the webpage of Oulu Business School, and we will send information about that in email later this week. So, but questions? Do we have any questions or comments? So, if not, so I thank you very much for your participation and have a nice sunny day. Thank you.